Hi everybody and welcome to Talk 6B on the Programming Fundamentals on the Higher Diploma in Computer Science at WIT. We've been working our way through the game of Pong, and the last day we covered 5 different iterations, building up the functionality as we go. And we're going to continue that journey today. So let's get started. Here's a recap of more detailed recap of what's in all of the different versions. So we started out with version 1, the ball moving from the left to the right of the screen. We then moved on to version 2 with the mouse controls controlling the paddle. So we now had a ball and a paddle. In version 3 we implemented collision detection. Version 4 we had game over when 3 lives were gone, score when lives were lost, and output to the console. Changes made only to the Pong game. And then in version 5, which was the last version we looked at, we introduced the concept of a tournament, where we have a number of games in a tournament. And again, we only changed the file that included the setup and draw routine to enable us to have 5 games in a tournament, each game having 3 lives. So you might want to take a look back over the demo for version 5, and that video is available in this playlist. Today we move on to version 6. And version 6 is going to introduce a new class. It's called the player class. There's next to no new functionality in the program, but what we will see is that we're organizing our code better, refactoring our code to include objects. So because there isn't much of a difference, I haven't created a demo for version 6. It's effectively the same as version 5. We're just refactoring the code. So here are the classes for this new version of the game. What's different here is we've got a player class, which is a brand new file. So you'll be introducing a new tab inside processing, from which you'll build out these fields and methods. So we have a player class. This stores the score of the current player in an array. We use an array of integers to hold the scores for the games, and to do that we'll have to declare this new array called scores as an array of integers, and we add one word in front of it which is private, which means that this is only available inside the player class file. Inside the constructor we'll then define the array to be a certain size, and the size is going to be the number of games. So if we're going to play 5 games, we'll need to store 5 scores. So num of games is the size of the array. New is going to call the constructor, creating a new integer array, allocating enough space for 5, and that's going to be referenced by the variable scores. The add score method adds a score to this array when called by Pong game. So every time we call add score, it's going to add a new entry into the scores array. So our fields, which are private in player, are player name, scores and count. Player name is just a string object. Again, we're using the word private in front of the type to say that it's only available inside of this class file, so other classes can't make use of it. Scores is an integer array, which we've just discussed, and count holds the current position in the array. We also have getter and setter fields. Getters and setters for the fields that we just mentioned. So we've get player name, get scores and get count, and we also set player name and set scores. So let's take a look at the add score method now, and this takes in the new score as a parameter, adds the new score to the array, and increments the count variable. So if we take a look at the scores array, in this example we've already got a count of 2, so that means we're using indexes 0 and 1, and at index 0 the score was 4, so in the first game we had a score of 4, in the second game we had a score of 5. We have 2 sets of scores. And we play another game, and that game ends up in a score of 3. So this is going to be stored, this 3 is going to be stored at index 2, which is the value of count. So this is what the array looks like afterwards. In other words, after we call the method add score, this one, it says if score is greater than or equal to 0, then scores count is assigned a value score. In other words, put this value into this position in the array. And when you've done it, you need to increment count, so that count is now pointing to the correct position. So this class also has a method called toString, and what toString does is it takes the object and creates a string out of all of the different values. So it's a useful method, and we will have a toString method in most classes that you build in future. But this is the first time I think we've seen it. If you take a look at the code, you'll notice we're using the /n as new line, and this is being used inside of a loop, which means when we print out our string, we're putting a new line on the end of it, and this is going to make the string start on a new line the next time. So rather than printing out, you notice all this is doing is building up a string, and then that string is being returned from the method. So wherever toString is called from, what comes back is an actual string, and then that can be used in different ways once it goes back. So again, here we have a count of 4, where we have the first 4 indices in the array already used up. The values of those indices are 4, 5, 3 and 4. And if we use toString, it's going to return this big long string, which is score 1 has a value of 4 with a new line character, score 2 is a value of 5 with a new line character, score 3 has a value of 3 with a new line character, and score 4 has a value of 4 with a new line character. So what we get back is one big huge string. Remember, the /n is going to give us a new line. So when is the player object used? Well, in our original Pong game file, we declared a ball and we declared a paddle object, which we can just highlight here. So here's our ball, here's our paddle, and we're now going to create a player object. So this declares the variable player to be of type object player with a capital P. So after we've initialized the ball and initialized the paddle, we're then going to initialize the player object by calling the constructor method in new player and passing in initial values of Pong master and the max number of games. So this is going to call the constructor method. We then have player.addScore passing in a score. So this is going to be called in the draw method, which we'll highlight here. And what we're saying is that when you're finished a game, you want to add that score to the score array, and we're doing that by calling the add score method of the player object. So what we've done is set up our player class to be used with our Pong game, and it hasn't affected the way the game runs or the output of the game or how it operates. It's just refactored the code to use this new player class. So next up we'll take a look at version 7. We've already created a demo for you to take a look at, so you might take a look at that now, and we'll talk to you after you've seen that.